Hello. I had a client actually email me and ask me a question about chakras. And it was actually way too much to type out, so it's a lot easier to just kind of talk about these things. So I figured I'd make a really quick video for everybody. So what she was asking was, are chakras, the seven colored systems that are inside of our energy bodies, are these places where implants and entities use to attach into? And what are the real chakra centers? So she mentioned Dantian. She wants to know about what the Dantians are. So let's just do a quick breakdown right here. So if we look at the rainbow color spectrum of visible light, everything that we use to see the light bouncing off of the objects around us, this is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And this spectrum right here, this rainbow that we see, this is visible light. We know about, like if you go higher into ultraviolet or further down into infrared, ultra above, infra below, these are spectrums of color that we can't see with our visible eyes, but we can measure them. And the further out you go, the more range of spectrum there is available outside of visible light, which you end up needing, electronics and technology in order to perceive and experiment with, so on and so forth, if you don't know how to access these body systems. So this color spectrum right here that we now have inside of our energy centers in our bodies, what they do is they concentrate that frequency of specifically, say for instance, the solar plexus, this is orange right here, this is green, and so it would be the frequency of those colors right there, and everything inside of that electromagnetic frequency that is possible to access inside of that's what you can put inside of that energy system. Now, does that mean that it's completely and totally activated on that level? Well, let's talk about that for a second. If we're always talking about as above, so below, what ends up happening when we check out the entire electromagnetic spectrum compared to that tiny slice of visible light that we can see? Well, if we were to put this into a metaphor, if one of these or if our visible light spectrum was the width of a sheet of paper, like that little tiny sheet of paper, and we had a stack that was almost 2,000 feet high, our visible light spectrum would only be one width of those sheets of paper. Everything else is outside of our awareness from what we can see. And from that perspective right there, this also means that we're not only limiting ourselves inside of a tiny spectrum of electromagnetic frequency or universal energy by keeping ourselves inside of that visible spectrum right there, but then we're cutting it into 7 different slices. And so we're taking that tiny, tiny little perspective, and then we're cutting that into even smaller pieces. And then we're doing, energetic perspective and understanding with the world around us with that. Now, that right there is just the understanding of the color systems right here. But let's actually talk about the way that the chakras are inside of the body and physically connect in. If you look at the way that the chakras are set up inside of the body, they correspond with glands. It's different for men and women with the root and the sacral chakra. You've got the testes, the prostate, and the ovaries that are all connected in with that. And obviously men don't have the ovaries to get that endocrine jump right there, and women don't have the prostate on that end right there. But other than that, those are the two only gland separations that are different between the genders right here. And what ends up happening is that as you go further up, you end up having the sacral chakra. It's the adrenals in the backside and the ovaries with the women on the front side. But then up above that in the solar plexus, you end up having the pancreas. Right here's the thymus or the high heart. Right here's the thyroid. You end up having all the glands inside of your brain, and then you have your crown up above, and the perineum is the root down below, in which you've got separate organs and sensory spaces inside of these spots right here too. But the energy centers correspond with each one of these glands because a hormonal and biochemical activation can take place inside of here that then ends up starting to create power that the color spectrum, the frequency starts to actually take that resonance up, and it gets a very specific buzz. It's like a very specific feeling that when you move that in the area, it does, it can tune into different energetic abilities, it can heal the body, it can open things up, so on and so forth. But this is all glandular. Now, where do glands get their power? Where do glands get their marching orders, so to speak? And we can look at that and say, well, it's the brain, right? Well, yes and no. The brain is the one that's actually doing the on and off chemical, electrochemical, and energetic on and off switches. but it's the bioelectricity. That spark of life that animates the body, that, if you don't have it, your body can't keep itself alive and you die. That is what is giving everything its marching orders. What creates that energy? Where does this bioelectricity spark? Well, we've got neural tissues that do that. So we've got our brain, which, again, it comes back to it's an on and off switch, but the heart is just as much neural tissue as your brain is. It's about a half and half type of a thing, which is why if you look at neural tissue cells and heart cells and muscle cells, it's like if you have a muscle cell and a neural tissue cell right here, the combination of the two is a heart muscle cell. And it's the mixture between the muscle and the neurochemical, and this right here is where bioelectricity starts to activate. But on the other end of that, you have your intestines, and your intestines are just as much a gray matter as your brain tissue. It's all neural tissues, and so these neural tissues is where we get the term the belly brain from, so on and so forth. Now, Dantian's, what she's talking about right here are the three chakra center, or the three energy centers that actually power all of the glandular energy centers. And with things along the lines of, like, say, chakra removal or something like that, you can't remove these centers, but what you can do is over-unify them and harmonize them back into a full spectrum understanding, where it's not 7 slices of that one pie, it's one gigantic sensation, feeling, energy, connection. So what we want to be doing is, with the color spectrum inside of the body, we want to recognize that red might have its time and a place, the same with orange and yellow and green and blue, indigo and violet, and so on and so forth. But what we want to be doing is overextending beyond trying to simplify into one ray, one frequency, and we want to build it into a space where we're getting all of it at one time. And, the natural progression, if we look at the color spectrum, how do we get the color spectrum? Well, we break apart light, or we have, objects that bounce a specific color spectrum back to us and absorb the rest of it. And so we see that color. Prisms, we take apart like a beautiful golden beam of sunlight, and we take that prism, and suddenly we can see all the light that's inside of that one beam that to us looks golden. And so if you start to go and do energy work where you're trying to make all of your energy centers bright gold, what you're doing right there is not only bringing in all of that electromagnetic knowing inside of your nervous system, you're hypercharging it. You're creating the neural tissue cells inside of the body, an over-unified field that then the bioelectricity gets so strong that it over-unifies inside of the blood, the iron, the water. It all starts to create like this crazy tingling, swirling sensation. And with that, you can actually charge it up simply by expanding out, and instead of trying to simplify and compartmentalize and do one at a time, you grow outward. And so this isn't about getting rid of anything inside of the body. It's not about saying one system's better than the other or this is better than that. But when it comes down to it, you either have a lot of energy flow and awareness and activation inside of that space, or you do not. There might be some flow inside of there. You might have some awareness in there. But when you go into a full spectrum space, when you're activating everything into one thing, you're experiencing this over here, you're pulling it in, you're experiencing this over here, you're pulling it in, you're combining the frequencies, you're making them have sensation, you're experimenting with it. This is how we start to get to the space to where implants, entities, stuff like that, like if they don't have anything hard to grab a hold of, they can't grab a hold of you. And if you're active, if you're clean, if you're open, if you're full spectrum, like that hard thing inside of you that they need to grab a hold of, it's not there and they can't grab it. And, you can contain things, but I mean, even then you can still figure out what's going on. And by simply expanding into an emotional, energetic, and mental space to where you over unify and activate all of your energy centers as one field, well, that's like the ultimate chakra, right? It turns into a sun. And from that space right there, there's really nothing that can bother you. Even if you've got like some really big nasty stuff going on, it doesn't matter. Because if you're a sun, how much shadow can you put on the sun in order to turn the sun off? Enough said, right? I hope this really brings clarity on that level. And if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Like I've got all kinds of information on this level, and even if I don't know the answer to it, like you just have to tune into the energy, and then I can translate it for you guys anyway. So thank you. I hope this helps. Bye-bye.